Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Beat the Clock podcast. My name is Michelle Rubio-Garcia, and I am here to help you grow. Through the many timed interviews I'll be having, all guests will answer 4 time-specific questions. 1, who were you? 2, who are you? 3, who will you be? And 4, how can listeners avoid clocking out? By answering these questions honestly, we hope to show you how each moment connects to the next, so that you can begin your journey to find your passion, purpose, and growth. Whether they are entrepreneurs or thought leaders, all are invited to sit down, chat with me, and show you a realistic depiction of success. By doing so, we hope to change your mind and empower you to beat the clock.
What are you waiting for?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Beat the Clock. This is episode 11. If you're here for the first time, thanks so much for giving this a shot. And if you are returning, thank you so much for trusting me. Both are so important, and I know that with this pandemic, there is an abundance of time and options for you to really kind of entertain yourself. So I do not take it lightly that you're here, and I really take my job seriously of kind of giving you some stories that empower you and that push you a little bit out of your comfort zone. So let's go ahead and start with our BTC affirmations. Here we go. Number 1, say it with me. I trust myself. And it is okay to, guys. I always like to say a little thing in between. It's okay to trust yourself. In fact, doing so repeatedly will give you that confidence eventually to just do it by nature. Number 2, say it with me. My time is valuable. So whatever you give your time to people, to companies, it matters. And you can regain control of that if you have surrendered it before. So that leads right into number 3. I can control how I use my time today. So again, if you have forfeited your power before, today is the day you can get it back. Never think that it's too late. Never think that you are worthless. Anything and everything that you want is right at your fingertips the moment you decided. So today we're going to talk to Dean Furness. He has been on the famous TED Talk stage, and I just love that he is so down to earth. I've heard a lot of celebrities say that when they meet their idols or role models, that they're never who they appear to be on screen, and that they're kind of disillusioned, right? So with me, I felt overwhelmingly excited after talking to Dean, because he was even more down to earth, honestly, than he is in the TED Talk. In the TED Talk, he's super inspirational. And now in this BTC episode, you get to know him a little more naturally, a little less rehearsed. And he just has so much wisdom to share. And I'm so glad he's in my life now. So if you don't know him, Dean Furness is a married father of 3 daughters living in Martinsdale, Iowa. An accident in 2011 left him as a paraplegic without the use of his legs, but after several years of rehabilitation, hard work, and encouragement from his physical therapist, he competed as a wheelchair athlete in both the Chicago and Boston marathons. He now speaks about his experience and what it takes to face difficult challenges. Furness continues to train for marathons and aims to inspire others through a positive approach to owning each day. Professionally, he works for Wells Fargo. So far on BTC, we are 3 and 7, meaning 3 people have gone past the timer and then 7 people have beat the clock. So let's see how Dean fares, and let's see if he beats the clock. And the clock starts now. Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to Beat the Clock. I'm here with Dean Furness, or Furness?
Furness.
Yeah, I thought so, but I didn't want to get it wrong.
Yep.
So TED Talk speaker, you just told me it hit about 1.7 million views?
Yeah, I think if we have luck, we'll get there by the end of the day today. It's just humbling and crazy, ridiculous. But, who would have thunk, right?
Yeah, and thank you so much for being on Beat the Clock. I know you have so many more obligations coming your way and so many more opportunities. So I'm so thankful that you can squeeze us in.
No problem. I appreciate it.
So this is something that I do with all my guests, and I want to explain to you quickly how it works. So yes, you are a speaker. Yes, you are an athlete. Yes, you are a tech guru. I'm going to call you guru, even though I don't really like that word, but for the sake of time. But at your core, what I like to do with all my guests is kind of give them a phrase and explain why I'm giving you that phrase, and we'll talk about if that's accurate or not. So for me, you are, Dean, a rising phoenix, right? And again, I'm catching you in this point in your life where you're going into unknown territory. I really think, and we talked about it. You had no idea that it was going to get this much of a reaction. Your TED talk, and you're in the marathoning thing, and there's a lot going on in your life. And maybe, and I don't want to speak for you, so we'll talk about that in a bit. But maybe you felt before at a certain point in your life that your accident was going to be like your detriment, right? And actually, I think you wouldn't have the life you have now without it. Would you agree that you are like a phoenix rising?
Well, hopefully not too far, right? Don't want to rise too fast. It's interesting that I've never had anybody put that adjective on things for me that way, anyways, and that um, things are certainly changing, right? And whether they are better or worse is really up to a lot of different factors. But yeah, it's a different world by all means. And it's not that things were different before my accident. We can get into those details if you want later on. But things are definitely moving very fast, and they're moving kind of like I would hope they would have anyways, right? Maybe the accident was a little bit of a speed bump, but the career. I was 39 when I was hurt. My career was going well. It took a little bit to get the confidence to bring that back. It's not that I had lost what I was able to do, but to bring to it. But then you sprinkle in these other little things that through a lot of support of others have been able to be brought forward. You think about, I've always been a competitor, and so competing has always been interesting, but I'm finding that I'm competing with myself more than ever. And it's a lot of mental challenge more than ever. And I think it's worked its way into a lot of other aspects of my life, but yeah, rising Phoenix. It's interesting.
Yeah, and Phoenix are like glorious, and Phoenix like they have like they're associated with colors that represent strength and all this stuff. So I don't know. I was thinking of a couple of things, but I just felt like that one was really cool, and that's why I reached out to you. I couldn't believe the strength that it took for you to tell your story. I think storytelling are the things that save us, and that's the thing that people fear the most. So that's why I created this podcast. And you mentioned something really cool, a term that I'll coin for you. It's a personal average, right? So can you
Yeah.
explain that really quickly before we jump into the questions?
Absolutely. I'm a math guy, right? So my career is built on measurement. I build dashboards using our corporate data to help guide leaders and such through a variety of different charts and so on. And it ends up being something they can use to hopefully drive the company in the right direction. But with math being what I did in school and so on, that idea had always been there. And I stumbled on just an idea through the progression of the accident that there are many people that see what I do every day in my wheelchair as being this impressive thing. And for me, it's just what I do. It's just a regular day for me. So an average day. So to get out of bed, to take a shower, to drive a car. Oh my gosh, it's incredible driving a car. Well, it's kind of a regular day for me. It's not that great. And so I really started to build that up. And I'd done some speaking in the past where one of them I actually handed out little "Hi, my name is" stickers, and it just said hello. It said hello, and it said "I'm average" on it, and just to let everybody know that you are your own person. And there's a subtle piece here that's really got to be called out. We're talking about average as something that you own and can massage and build and grow. It's so different than being called average and having a label of being average, right? So one of the things that really came out as I was prepping for the TED Talk was a challenge by the coaches that were leading us there is to making sure that I was talking about average as a noun or a verb or an adjective, and it's one or the other, right? So somebody being called average is I would argue maybe not flattering. People may not enjoy being called average, and for whatever reason, others it may not be that big a deal. But for me, it really became about the noun in terms of when you are the only person, the average of one is yourself, and there isn't anybody to compare against. And so if you have that at your core and you focus on just that piece, it's really something you can get in touch with. And I think one of the real powerful but also most difficult parts of that is being just brutally honest with yourself as to where you are. And then taking that last step, it's not good or it's bad. I mean, it's just who you are. It's what you are, and what you do with it is really up to you. And you can be comfortable in doing nothing. That's fine. But understand that it's really your call, and you shouldn't worry about what other people are doing.
Yeah, and I love that you say that. And there's so many points that I want to touch on, but we'll see when we can sprinkle them in. So we're going to jump into the first question. So I love that you framed your talk like this. So you compared, like you said, your old self to your new self. And that's exactly, it fits right in with this format. So who were you before the TED Talk, before the accident? I mean, I don't know how you want to perceive that, but who were you?
Sure. It's interesting who I was then and who I am now are really very similar, but in between I had this dip, of course. Prior to the accident, I was highly motivated in my career. I would travel. I almost had 1 million miles flown for my work. Put a lot of stake in being a father of my 3 kids. Helping coach their activities and such. Handyman. We have 10 acres of land here in Iowa, and there's a lot of work that goes into that. So basically, had this feeling of just being busy, and like any other family and such. Very much focused on my work and what I wanted to accomplish, and really trying to get done with work as quick as possible. So not work till 65, right? Work till 40 or something, which is kind of a pipe dream, right? But a lot of that that went on very well, very active in the community and such. And in fact, prior to the accident, had just ran to be on our school board in a very, very small school. It wasn't as political or as big as it sounds, but trying to engage more at the community level as well, and help drive things for the betterment of people in the area, if you will. I'd like to think that I was approachable and could be engaged, and was a good friend and neighbor. That's for others to decide, but I kind of hope that was there. So before the accident, was very much there, and now certainly things are very much paralleled in terms of how motivated I am, and by just the pure nature of the accident, you can't get away from the community because they're so anxious to help and make sure that things are going well. So.
Yeah, I want to put that accident in context. So for those of you who haven't watched the TED Talk, it was December of 2011, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, December 2011. Yep.
Almost 9 years. How do you feel about that?
I initially put some bit of stock in counting. It's my 1-year anniversary, and after that first year, it's just another day. I remember the 1-year anniversary kind of being a big deal. I remember 1,000 days as something that I was sitting around one day. I was like, if I did 3 years, that's too many. So here I am. It looked like sometime in June was 1,000 days or something, just kind of having that recognition. But anymore, I don't think we'll do anything different if it's 10 years or 9 years or whatever. It's just another day. So I don't put a lot of stock on it, or into that.
Your reality at this point, right?
Yeah. In fact, I mean, it's who I am. I don't have a huge goal of being able to walk again. It doesn't hold me back. I don't have, I'm not signing up for every clinical trial or for stem cell surgery or whatever.
I like that you mentioned at the talk, you're like, I have no hopes of walking again, or not hopes, but desire, right? And you were like, You guys are so slow. I don't think
Uh,
that's true.
yeah, if you want to go get groceries or go to Walmart or shopping center, bring me with and hand me the list, and you just wait, and I'll zoom around and I load up my lap with everything, and I go back to the cart, and then we're out the door. It's interesting that way. I've had friends of mine that I met through my racing and stuff. That one of them said, "Why you act like a 10-year-old in your wheelchair?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You're just going somewhere. You're always fast. You're always wanting to get there quick." And honestly, I don't know why. I just don't feel like I have any time to waste. And so when I'm in crowds, it's frustrating because I'm like, oh my gosh, these people just get out of my way. We're going, we're fast, but so be it. I think it's fun to have my kids and my wife even say, "Man, you got to slow down when we're walking in the mall or we're doing whatever." But yeah, it's a big part of my day is just being able to zoom around and go where I want to go. And in that light, what I love to, I don't want to say back to normal. That's wrong. What I love to walk and run again. And so, and I think one of the biggest things I miss is just being able to give a proper hug to my family. Being in a chair, you can, but but I don't, nor would I sign up for a procedure that would put me in a walker or not 100% and not whatever, because I'm fast in my wheelchair. You put me in a walker with crutches, I would be so frustrated for taking so long to get somewhere.
This
Yeah.
is like mobility purgatory. Like you're not fully mobile
Yeah.
in a walking sense, but you're not fully mobile either in a wheelchair. It's just you're kind of trying to get to
Yeah.
one.
Exactly. And so when it's inevitable, every few months I'll get another link from somebody that says, "Hey, there's new research out and spinal cord, this and that." And I look at it because I'm interested, because there are friends that I have that are certainly more enamored with wanting to get back to that. But for me, it's like, yeah, that ship has sailed. I'm 47 now. I have no doubt in my mind that if something came around and it required some sweat equity and work to get strength back, that I would sign up for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't think the technology's there yet. Yes, there are devices you can put in to help you, like a pacemaker device that puts a sheath around your spinal cord that passes the signals. I mean, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not being healed. That's making you into a cyborg, which is great, but that's not being healed, right? So it's interesting that way.
So we're already kind of in there, so I'll just go ahead and ask you. So the second question we always ask on Beat the Clock is, who are you? So you're kind of giving some
Yeah,
answers there already. So I want to kind of ask, I guess, another question, if that's all
sure.
right. So you're saying basically that the wheelchair magnified who you already were, right? You were already this guy that was on the go, that was very active, both in the community, geographically, right? You were always traveling. So would you say that that's true? That the wheelchair kind of enhanced what was already about you?
I had never had anybody think of it that way, or myself, but I suppose you could argue that, right? I think there's a level of chip on my shoulder approach to things too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the second of four siblings. Growing up, had to fight for everything we could get, right?
Yeah.
Being a number two child means you get blamed for everything, and you actually did most of it, not all of it.
Yeah.
So I was trouble growing up. But I think growing up and knowing how I compared to my siblings, how I felt like I always had to prove myself before the accident, and really just whatever. Maybe that was part of my drive, right? Maybe it was self-imposed. But nowadays, there's absolutely a point to, oh, you're going to do a marathon. Okay, that's fine. I can show you I can do that. Don't you dare tell me can't, because we'll take care of that real quick. And the simple stuff of driving and stuff. I kind of appreciate the challenge when folks will look at me and make an assumption.
There's a real prowess in being an underdog, right? Like
Yeah.
I tell my students that all the time because we're at a school locally where we're not seen as the cream of the crop, where we're kind of seen as well, I don't want to go into it, but when you think of success locally, you think of other schools, and I tell them there's power in being the underdog because nobody's looking at you. Like
Yeah.
there's no expectation, so you can work in silence behind the scenes, and then you can come out of there and just surprise everybody and blow them out of the water. And
Right.
I don't think they realize that.
Well, I think there's a point to having confidence and some swagger and being able to do that without having to beat your chest and yell to everybody that you have arrived. Just let the scoreboard take care of that, right? And
Yeah.
it's I had an opportunity to play football in college, small college, right? But we won a lot of games, and when anybody, any other team would make a comment, we would just say, "Hey, check the scoreboard out. That's all you got to do. There's nothing else to say. You let your actions determine that." And I think as you think about your students and you think about the comparison, I mean, every small town or school or whatever has a rivalry. You got to be real careful that you don't let that define you. And we in college had our rivalry, by all means, but it wasn't who we were, right? So there's a lot of power in settling in on that. And again, it gets back to the average thing. If you settle in on that, then maybe you can do something about it as opposed to worrying about what that rival's doing.
Yeah, and I mean, like, with the dance team, when I was with them, because I coached them for 5 years, we got the school's first national title. And some things that I was very quick to say, okay, we've made history for this school. And I told them, you need to stay humble though. And like you're saying, you don't need to say a word. You don't need to pound your chest and go, we're the best team ever. All you got to do is whip out the trophies, and the trophies do the talking. That's it. You don't ever have to get in somebody's face, because by you getting in somebody's face and being that person, you actually turn them off to your success. There's something about, like you're saying, having that swagger, just acting in that identity, that people are drawn to you, and then they'll see your success, right? You don't have to be like, here are the receipts, and then kind of proving yourself. You don't need to. Once you let go of that proving to anybody, I think, like you're saying, that's where you thrive.
Yeah, I get a chance to coach our high school girls basketball. Since my daughter's on the team, they asked me to help out. This will be my 8th year of doing that, and there's a huge story behind all of that, and the value for me selfishly that I get out of that. But we take a lot of pride in knowing that any team that lines up against us is going to know that they played a game when they were done, and that's all it's going to be. Is we don't have to say a word, that they just know that they're in for a long night. And we kind of just have a wry smile and go about our business. But the thing is about that rival though, and to kind of pull back into the average thing, a couple of the comments that I received on my talk, one of them I think kind of lost track of what I was trying to get after. Comparing to somebody else and wanting to be like or not like or worry about somebody else is one thing. I'm not saying that you should lose track of those people. I'm just saying don't let them judge or determine your success. So I absolutely know the times of the best in the world that I'm racing against. I absolutely know I will never be anywhere near them. But if I flip that around, why would I even be doing it? Because they're so good, and I would quit as opposed to really working on me. So I absolutely knew who my rivals were in college and high school. I was very much aware of them, but I wasn't worried about keeping up with them. I was worried about making myself better. And I think it's just a quick distinction that I'm not trying to be an isolationist where it's just you and just yourself. Focus on just you, but know who's out there, and just don't let it drive whether you're successful or not.
Yeah, and I always say that to my team when I had it. I would say, stop comparing yourself to everybody, all the local dance teams. I'm like, but be very aware of what they can do. Like if they can do a certain trick, if they can do a certain skill, that's not just you're not supposed to go in blind, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
You
Right.
got to have a playbook, and the playbook has to be adaptive and competitive to what's going on in the actual dance world, right? Because if you just do whatever
Right.
you want, there's not really the perspective to, or the motivation, I guess, to win, right? Because then you're just doing
Right.
it without context. Competition is nothing if there's no competitor.
Right. Right.
So that's something that I want to talk about. You're saying, comparison to others and then comparison to yourself. So um, the when you were trying to, I guess, really work on your physical therapy, you said that the biggest frustration came from you comparing what you used to do to what you can do now. So can you say or give insight as to how maybe you conquered that? What kind of thoughts were going through your mind so that you could be able to kind of get over that mental
Yeah.
obstacle?
I think some of it is, to be blunt, you have to just give up on some of it. But I think I was lucky in that those things did not define who I was beforehand, and therefore I had a lot of other things to build on. So one of the biggest examples, and one of the whether it's a big example or biggest moments, was in therapy in Denver at the hospital. I say therapy like it's a bad thing. I was in rehab, but that doesn't sound right either, right? I was getting my spine worked on. Part of the facility was a big gymnasium, and we did a lot of our work there, everything from the weights and the stretching, and we had a wheelchair class and so on. We also had a recreational period, and we started to shoot baskets on basketball court. And I used to be, I could do well in basketball, and um, it was the first realization that things were going to be different. I tried to shoot the ball, and I had no legs, right, and no core, no abs or lumbar, and when you shoot the ball, I could barely get it to the rim. I mean, we're talking right underneath the rim. So you go from being able to make a basket from 20 feet to now being stuck at 3 feet, and that was the first indication that things were not going to be how they were. I used to be fairly good at golf. Um, I can still golf, but it's not the same. It's not enjoyable.
Mhm.
Um, and so luckily my head and my hands, well, my head might've been affected, but my hands, my hands still work and my career's fine. And so I had a lot of other things that were going to define what I was able to do. And so it's really a matter of, can you take that energy and realize that those things never defined you to begin with entirely. Um, and there are other ways, I think, to make it work. And for me, it was just finding another way to compete. And I kind of just stumbled into the wheelchair racing. It was a scenario where we came back home, and my daughter, I was taking her to a basketball practice, and one of the other fathers was outside walking around the facility while practice is going on, trying to get some exercise. And I got to thinking, oh, I can do that. I can just push my wheelchair around outside for an hour. What's the difference? And that turned into my physical therapist saying, let's just go do a half marathon. And here we are. And we moved into the regular marathons. So I think the passion for things, you can still have that. You can still be a fan. You can still drive that passion a different way. You just may not be able to do some of the things you used to do, but understand it. That's not who you are, right? Everybody's so multifaceted. For all I know, I'm the best bowler in the world. If I was gonna, I mean, I've never done that, but as far as I know, I could be the best artist in the world. I could be whatever. So who knows what you're going to try to find out what that thing is. I just now realize that I'm not going to make any 3-pointers. I'm not going to get another hole in one. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just different. It's just different. A lot of folks, I think, will tend to focus so much on that one thing that they can't do anymore. And
Right.
it's bigger than that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. And I'm sorry, I don't know if there's a lag or if I'm just being, um, I want to attack that idea. But yeah, I think that even for me in this stage of my life, like I was so committed, like you're saying, to that label of being a very proficient dance coach that I was almost willing to stop exploring any other thing, right? And so what I hear you saying is that you have to drop your ego, right? Because even if you feel proficient in one thing, that doesn't mean
Yeah.
that's the end all be all, right? You have to kind of humble yourself and acknowledge, okay, well, I can be good at something else. Or like for me, this is the first summer that I have off in 6 years, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I was like, used to creating. I was used to having this energy and this task orientation, and I didn't know how to channel it. And honestly, I didn't even feel ready to do it yet. Like I just said, the first Friday after summer started, I said, I'm going to do a podcast and I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And boom, like I just knew
And
I
you
had,
have, yes.
yeah, and I have this energy, and like you're saying, it's just about redirecting that energy and surprising yourself. Because if I would have stayed loyal to that label of dance coach, who knows what would have happened? Maybe there would have been bad years and I would have gotten disillusioned. Maybe there would have been great years and then I would have gotten really in my head and really in my ego. But it was about letting all of that go, forgetting the labels and just playing for playing sake, like you're saying. And I said it in my first episode too, where I was just kind of talking and ranting. One of my friends said that, I could be the best trumpet player in the world and I didn't even explore it. Like we never know what's
Right.
in us if we're not willing to go there.
Sure. But do you feel like you're finding that now? Because I feel like there's definitely a niche. Let me put it this way. I knew before the accident that I was good at a lot of things. I could compete. I was never great at any of them. And I have an older brother who, man, he could run. And a younger brother who was tough. My sister, she teaches art at University of Colorado. I mean, just brilliant. And I'm just kind of this number two child that's kind of, I can do a lot of different things, and I don't know if I've found that one thing yet, but I think I take a lot of pride in my work for sure. I take a lot of pride in the other aspects of my life. So it's a good point. Do you know what you're supposed to be good at? And the thing is that you don't, right? You'll kill yourself thinking about that question. It'll just bury you if you worry about, am I doing the right thing? And just what you're doing makes you go hard and go for it. What happens, happens.
Yeah, because even like I paid somebody for my book, right? I paid an editor to edit it, and I sent out a chapter to some people that were part of what I call the launch team, right? And they're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to read the chapter, leave a review, whatever. And one person, and this is that I did it by accident. One person, I left them as an editor, not a viewer. And then they reached out to me and they were like, "Hey, Michelle, I don't know if you did this on purpose or if you caught it or not, but is this the final version?" And she like took a screenshot of one misspelled word. And that's
Wow.
that I already had edits.
Yeah.
So I had to go back in and I had to reread it like a robot. The dog went to, like
Yeah.
that, word by word. And even though I paid an editor, um, I still found like 13 typos, right? And that's
Wow.
that this editor works for two publishing companies, And one night, one of my neighbors came over because she wanted to congratulate me, and I told her, I was in my head a lot because if this one girl caught that and I couldn't catch it and the editor couldn't catch it, like I'm a freshman college writing teacher, and then
Yeah.
this girl's a publishing expert, and this other person caught something. I was just so in my head. I was like, should I even release it? What should I do? Like, let me get another person to edit it. And then I said, you know what? Who cares? Like, I did the due diligence. I read over that thing like 10 times. I'm sure the editor did as well. My neighbor said, yes, just release it because she's getting actually a master's in publishing. And she said, I look at books all the time that they're professional books from professional companies, and there's a typo in there, or the margins are too narrow, or
Yeah.
whatever. It's ultimately just about releasing the content and just hoping that it has the impact that you want, anyways.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so I want to visit this idea too of, I guess, being in your head. So you mentioned it in your TED Talk, how you felt really good once you got proficient in marathoning, right? But then there was a point where you met other wheelchair athletes and then
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
were insecure about your own ability. So can you speak more into
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. The culmination of all of it, where I'm at today, is the product of a lot of help and support, new friends, old friends, being able to ask for help, which is a little bit of a skill. It's okay to ask for help.
Yes.
But the challenge behind all of it was when I first came home from my accident, February of 2012, that May of 2012.
Over a
And
year?
what's that?
Over a year of you being in the hospital?
No, it was December 2011 to February of
Yeah, that's right.
2012.
That's
So
right.
just those 3 months, right?
Okay.
But that spring, May, June of 2012, I went to a clinic for wheelchair racing. And so it's May of 2012. And I met two people that were on the, or aspiring. One had won a gold medal in Beijing in wheelchair racing, and another girl was just getting into it. And they were from the University of Illinois, and some good friends over there that got me going. And I think about in 2012, and I met those folks. And then I started the challenge with my physical therapist in, it would have been the spring of 2016 or something like that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think
And
you had 10 weeks, right?
yeah. And so 4 years went by where I don't know what I did. I don't know if I just waffled or I didn't find that thing. And so I reached out to the gentleman that was there. His name was Josh, and over Facebook, and I started stalking him online, trying to get his attention to say, hey, you don't know me, but we met, and I really want to try this. Can you help me understand what the next step would be? And, meanwhile, I'm on YouTube, I'm watching races, getting to know who those folks are. Yeah. And when you do that, you start realizing what you're doing. You're watching and trying to aspire to be a professional athlete. I get it's Olympics, but they are the best in the world. Mm-hmm. Well, later that fall, I finally got a hold of the coach. I found my way into getting in contact with him. Turns out he's from Iowa as well, very similar age to me. So a lot of common points there. And he wrote back and said, yeah, come on over, I'll get you started. And so I went 4.5 years where I was introduced to it. I did absolutely nothing before I finally woke up to it all. And so when he got me started, it's an expensive sport to get started with. You're not going to go just buy a basketball or a football. There's equipment, and the equipment's custom because your body type is different and your paralysis is different, and so on. And I didn't want to invest until I knew I could do what I was wanting to do. And that coach let me borrow some equipment, and we figured it out. And he was nice enough to answer my emails and give me some advice. And of course, the continual push from friends and family home. But when it came time for the first big race, he's the one that challenged me to enter Chicago. And it's one thing to go 13 miles in a wheelchair, and people might sound, oh my gosh, it's a wheelchair. My wheelchair that I'm in right now, it weighs 10 or 12 pounds, maybe, the entire chair. I mean, it's an ultralight chair. It's a normal wheelchair, but it's not like a wheelchair you see at the lobby of a hospital, with this big, heavy thing, right? And keep in mind, when you go up a hill, you get to go down the hill. And when you're in a wheelchair, going down a hill is pretty easy. You can just let it happen. So to move.
What's the average weight of those hospital ones? Do you know by any chance?
I don't know, but the one I'm in now, I drive my car, I hop out of it and I lift it across, and it sits next to me in the seat. So, it's super light, right? And so, if you take the wheels off, it's 8 pounds.
Wow.
It's just so light, right? It's like a gallon of milk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think people misinterpret that wheelchair in miles. When it's flat, it's easy. When it's a little bit downhill, it's really, really easy. And of course, when you go uphill, it's really hard. But you're not uphill the whole race, right? And so when you think about the challenge from a half marathon of 13 miles to a full of 26.2, people are like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. But when you're in the wheels, it's different. You can't compare running to it, right? Mm-hmm. Not to say we don't get tired. So the challenge of getting involved there and being invited to, or challenged, I should say, to do Chicago was really good until you show up to the meeting to get the instructions about the race the next day. And at those big races, so whether it's Boston or Chicago, there's one in Duluth, Minnesota, they treat the wheelchair people really, really well. They have all the volunteers lined up. They bus us where we need to get bussed. They have special meetings about, here's where you're going to put your stickers on your chair. Here's where you're going to be notified. Well, in that room were all the people that I'd been watching online, and something called the imposter syndrome kicks in. You can look that up, right? And you just sit there and you think, okay, I know one person in this room, and that one person was the coach. And like I said, he had done quite a bit for me, just answering emails and invited me to get to know some more of the team. And those relationships today are, I mean, every day I'm texting or calling one of the kids, right? They're graduating college. That's how old they are. And here I am, my kids have graduated college. And it's just privileged and humbled to be engaged at that level with them. But there was definitely a point where it's not that I didn't belong. It was just the realization of, I mean, it's the real deal. I mean, those folks that are in the room are not messing around. They're gonna be really fast. So.
And I mean, you can psych yourself into thinking that your training wasn't equally as hard, right? They are the real deal, but you are the real deal too, because you did all the work. It's not like you just do whatever you want and to qualify for Chicago.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. There's pictures that I've seen at the start of the race where, the big races will send you a results catalog, and in that catalog has everybody's time, and there's 25,000 runners, right? So it shows everybody's name and the different divisions. There was a picture at the very beginning of the race with all the wheelchairs, and I'm like, that's not me, that's not me, that's not me. And I'm way tiny in the very bottom of the picture. That's me way back there. And that's the first 1 minute of the race. That's how far behind I was already. But I finished. And I think that's what's been fun. And ever since, it's been a challenge of getting faster second by second. And those same people that I continue to look up to now, even though they're so young and talented, it's fun to talk to them about non-racing things. So to be a mentor is too strong of a word, but to be a friend, I think, and have them ask me about, what should I do about grad school? What should I do about this class? There's this guy I kind of like, I mean, all that sort of conversation that as a dad, I can maybe help with career advice. And then I turn around and say, how did you get faster doing this? And they can help me with the racing. So it works out pretty good.
I love that you mentioned that because, I found the most success, honestly, right now in this season, reaching out to younger people or reaching out to older people or whatever you want to call it. But I would not have done that before. I was very much in my comfort zone with my immediate community. So there's something to be said, like you're saying, about being open to whoever, like everybody can contribute. You can have an amazing conversation with somebody who's 20 years your junior, and you can learn from each other. People don't want to believe that. I don't know if it's like insecurity of looking a certain way or they're too intimidated, but I think that, again, like we were saying, when you forget the labels, when you humble yourself and remove the ego, some really awesome things can happen.
Yeah, and I think we've settled in on, once we got to know each other a little bit more, they invited me over to stay for a week to train with the team and things like that. And we found that we have some common music that we like. And, every day there's a note about, hey, go listen to this song or that song. And I think there's a way to keep in touch there. And so they're keeping me young for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, all that happened again just by you, like you said it, you have to go all the way down on the list to see your name, but just having the humility to see your name on that list so far down and go, okay, now what? Where do I go? And you keep trying to go up. It's that mental exercise. None of us want to take that initial step to just be there. But being there is the victory already. And once you're in the room, capitalizing on it and then magnifying the success.
Yeah, it's amazing because that race took that first one was 2 hours and 15 minutes, so it's such a small part of everything to that point and everything that's followed. It's not that it's a non-event. There's a huge amount of satisfaction in finishing, but you're stressing out about something that's going to be over in 2 hours. then you got to figure out, yeah, what's next. So.
Yeah. Okay. So we have, believe it or not, we have like about 4 minutes left.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
yeah, if you want to talk about being open to the opportunities, being humble with everybody that you meet, we're going to quickly wrap up the third question. So, who will you be? Who's the future dean? What's he going to look like? And then I'll give you about 2 minutes for that, and then we'll wrap it up with the final question.
I'm going to be retired and relaxing with
Woo! Love it.
with the margarita, maybe. It's a really good question. I hope to continue to build on things beyond the racing, right? COVID has been interesting. I've been very edgy at home, not for any other reason than I think we are all experiencing a different kind of tired.
Yeah.
And I think that I need to continue to learn from that. And so I think there's a point to just working on being a better person. And it's hard, right? Everything in my TED Talk can be hypocritical. I have bad days, absolutely, right? And I'm on edge, and I get frustrated, and like any parent might, and I think I need to continue to recognize those things and adjust them better. And I think there are other parts of my average that need a lot of work yet. I feel solid with my career. I feel solid with where I'm at with my fitness. But there's so many other places that need work. So,
me.
well, so in the future, get my youngest out the door and get her on a path of success is a big deal. Getting my oldest and my second as much support as I can to make sure that they're ready to go. And as they get older, they need less of you. So I think there's a big part of that. And then just being here for my wife and everybody else around. So.
Yeah, awesome. And so we have about 2 minutes left. So basically, you're saying, if I can kind of paraphrase it, to never get comfortable, right? Like you're saying, you feel really comfortable in those two spots, in your athlete phase and in your career man phase, but to never neglect the other parts that need just as much growth as you've given to those. Is that correct?
It is, right? And I think you bring up the word comfort. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And to your point, right? So I know I need to write. I know I have to get something published, and I'm not procrastinating. It's something I need to be more comfortable with doing. And some of that imposter stuff starts to sneak in again. Is should I, could I, why not, sort of thing. But there's definitely a need to make sure that you can stay comfortable even in an environment where you're not. And boy, in today's world, it's a really big deal.
Yeah, and I love that you say that line, because my OTF coaches, I go to Orange Theory, they say that a lot. So yeah, shout out to OTF Laredo. We have 1 minute, so do you want to give any advice to our listeners and tell them how to avoid clocking out? Because you had a very visible struggle, but what about the ones that have invisible ones? You have about a minute.
Yeah, I think today, in today's world, it's really important, right? And I'm guilty as well. I feel like we're all waiting for something. And, I don't know if we're waiting for permission to go outside with a mask or not a mask. If we're waiting for permission to get moving, the thing that's interesting is that this whole pandemic did not ask for our permission. It just showed up. And I feel like we've got a fair amount of time that I think we're just kind of sitting on and we're wasting because we're waiting. And so my advice would be get moving. And I'm not saying get outside and ignore the rules or the guidance, but I'm saying that you don't have to wait to move forward. You can come out of this ahead for yourself if you just get started right now. And I think that's the biggest advice I would have.
Awesome. So we have 10 seconds, and I think we are going to beat the clock. So for everybody here, the man behind the TED Talk, we're clocking out here, but don't clock out in your own life. Bye, guys. We did it.